ways to move forward so that we're not just working on, showing our outrage about what has happened, but we're looking at how do we prevent things from happening into the future? How do we bring the community to a place of wholeness and true equity within our nation? So Thomas and I have been going at this for roughly a month now. I think this might be meeting number 4 together. So we've had some great times, and we're glad that you're with us tonight. Tonight we're going to focus on some real ways that we can continue sustainable growth and a sustainable movement, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to be required. This isn't going to be something that's going to be handled in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months. If we look back at successful movements in the past, what we see is that, for example, the bus protest in Montgomery, Alabama, they lasted well over a year, and it was work after work after work after work, and it was about sustainability and long-term movement. So we're going to talk about sustainability in our advocacy tonight. We're going to talk about updates on some local movements. So we're going to have some individuals who have already done some things within their community and seen the improvement or get some feedback from them. We'll talk about growing our movement, and then advocacy through community. So it's going to be a pretty full agenda. We look forward to carrying that through. And I believe, Thomas, are you ready to jump on with your part there on sustainable advocacy? You might be on mute.
All right, can you hear me now?
Several times.
So you have to mute yours.
I did.
Okay.
Did you want to record?
All right, good to see you all. Thank you all for joining us. So one thing I wanted to talk about is sustainable advocacy. This is something that you got to kind of be mindful of. This is, I hate to say it like this, but maybe the 3rd or 4th hashtag that I've been through as far as advocacy is concerned. So I've kind of seen the ebbs and flows that, where the energy comes and goes. And so what I would like to see is us not only work on how to seize the moment and engage, folks now, but also how to think about this over a long term, so that we don't think about this as just a moment, but we think about this as a transformative evolutionary process that we are all engaged in together. And in order to do that, I think we need to be thinking of sustainability. Okay, so I'm gonna start with just a few tips that, oh, I need to record. I'm sorry. My beautiful wife just reminded me that I need to record.
Jason reminded me.
Oh, actually, it was my beautiful partner who reminded my beautiful wife that I needed to record. Okay,
Well,
so
actually, it was one of our
you're
beautiful...
muted, Jason. I know you're talking trash.
I'm muted.
Still can't hear you. Thank God. That's the Holy Spirit moving right there. All right. Okay, so I have some tips here that I'm going to provide. If folks have any other tips, I know we got some wellness folks on here. I saw Michelle on there getting down to that song. It moves me too, just not as well as you do. So if you guys have any other tips or something to throw out there, then this is kind of a community sharing space for us to kind of walk away with some tips that we can all share. So first, actually, I'm just going to throw them up there and then go. Know your role, right? So you didn't create this problem. You're not going to be able to fix it alone. Okay, so the best you're going to be able to do is use your time and your ability to stop perpetuating the system that discriminates against folks. But that is a process that it's not something that you got to spend lose time and sleep over doing. So understand that racism is systemic and it is ingrained in the system. You alone are not the system. Okay, we all make up the system, and therefore all of us moving, or a critical mass moving in one direction or the other changes the system. but you are not the system and you did not create this problem. Therefore, you should not feel the burden of solving all of it yourself, right? But I obviously understand we all have a role in undoing the harms of the system. Secondly, watch your exposure to trauma, right? You can get PTSD watching these videos. You can end up suffering depression. You can end up suffering mental health issues. Sustainability means allowing yourself to be exposed to the information that you need to be exposed to in order to trigger the passion and your desired participation. But quite honestly, that is not always coming through a cop killing video, right? And so, my wife, well, actually, the last video that's going around, I haven't seen it just because I don't have the emotional space for it, and so I know that that is going to be the only way that I'm able to be in a mental state, to be constructive or productive. So there's just no reason to expose yourself to it unless it's for education. But quite honestly, 13th is riddled with trauma. Khalif Browder, riddled with trauma. There's so much trauma in a lot of what it is you're taking in. Make sure you're being sustainable with it. Don't argue with people. Stop arguing, right? And I'm a debater by nature, okay? So I'm going to debate anybody on anything that I know enough about to develop an opinion on, right? So if I'm debating, that means I have developed an opinion. So we're going to debate, right? But there's a way to debate that doesn't trigger an emotional attachment to that particular argument, okay? So when you're talking with people, you're engaging folks, like the arguing generally is not going to be effective. Sometimes it will be when your friends see how much you're bothered by this and how much it triggers you, then yeah, some people do have an empathetic or compassionate reaction to that because they love you, okay? But that's generally not going to be true for the general stranger, okay? So remember in this that there's going to be some hard truths that people are coming to, and the only way to get them to come to that is if you are, leaving space for their emotion, but not taking up that space with your own emotion. That's also good for your own mental health and sustainability. Ground yourself. This is bigger than you and I, right? I'm a Christian. Okay, so I put all of this on God, right? So he's empowered me with the abilities to do this. And therefore I know that if I lean on him, then, everything I got or everything that I'm facing, he got it, right? So I have that confidence in really knowing that if I end tomorrow, there's so many other people that are genuinely invested by the same spirit that I'm invested by. So we are all just people grounded in one strong force of positivity, okay? And so it's much bigger than you. You are just a conduit, an actor in that. So just understand that you are doing great work, and in greatness means that you have to understand that this is not just about you. If you run a page or you run a group, schedule your posts, okay? This is how you're able to be multiple places at once. This is how you're able to take days off and people not know it, right? There are also times where I like to post on multiple, have scheduled post scheduled at multiple times a day or at the same time of day on multiple pages. It allows me to be multiple places at once, right? So you can be more strategic in how you are getting out your information. And if you see my posts, they're all long, right? So there's no way that I can do all of that at the same time, right? But with the scheduling, it allows me to get out my thoughts when I have them and then go away. And then I can take a day or two off and I still be visually present, at least in the social media realm. Have balance, right? Make sure that you are, if you don't run a page, make sure your personal page reminds folks why they love you, right? Like we don't all need to, and quite honestly, like even I don't want to see it all the time. I do, right? All of my friends are posting about, racism, wokeness, and all that stuff. It's great, right? But there are some times where I don't want to see it, right? And so being able to have small successes, small victories, like let us see your cute kids, right? You celebrated an anniversary or a weird quarantine birthday or something like that. Like, let us celebrate that stuff with you. It doesn't have to be about this all the time. And this also reminds the people in your network why they love you, right? And why your opinion to them matters. so that when they do get to see those other posts about, you know, what it is you're after, they still approach it with that position of empathy and compassion, because it's surrounded by all the reasons why they love you. And the point of all this is really to get movement in yourself, but as well to get movement in the folks around you who love you and genuinely care about you. So have perspective, understand that no matter what it is, you are wrong, right? But so are they. Okay, so when you take on this position, it allows you to be in a position of humility that you otherwise aren't able to access. And when you are engaging with people from a position of humility, you're able to take in what it is that they're saying. You can understand and digest their logic a little more. And then you understand that even though you're wrong, you're far more right than they are. And now you understand why. Okay, so there's one law, okay, it's natural law. It's a governing law that runs the universe that we ourselves are not individually privy to, even though we are all a part of it. Okay, our network and what happens in humanity is literally an interconnectivity of our own personal experiences, which means I can't be right about everything because I don't know about what's going on out there. Literally, the reality is our collectively learned experiences. So if that's the case, and I don't have access to that information, the best I can do is guess through some scientific method. Okay, so everybody's wrong. Even scientists should admit at the end of the day, they cannot conclusively prove anything. That being said, we have to do this from a position of openness. And if we do it from a position of openness, the stress gets alleviated. You don't have to worry about carrying that weight of being right. It is a heavy burden to be right. Okay, so understand that you're wrong and understand that other people are wrong too. You might just be more right than they are. And then finally, advocacy is a way of life. It is not just this momentary movement. Understand that your biggest contribution to change is literally the way you live your daily life. Okay, so you might not be able to make it to a protest. You might not be able to make it to a rally or anything like that. But that conversation that you have with your mom, right, who is a little outdated on her thinking, or your dad, right? This is where you might take the opportunity to inch them over a little bit more, obviously in love, and you don't want to force them because, you know, you don't want to get a negative reaction. But the point is to usher the people that you love into better understanding, and then to also guide yourself in understanding. So don't feel the pressure or the stress of thinking that you have to do so much right now, when you have to understand that your biggest contribution is to live this thing, right? The way that you vote, the way that you inform yourself, and the way that you inform others. So those are the just some general tips, some general strategies. Obviously, get your sleep, eat well, do your exercise, all that stuff. You know, I didn't put that stuff on there because, quite honestly, I go in and out of being good at that. So I am not going to be the person that's about to tell you to eat good when I can't wait to finish this so I can eat the cookies that are on that counter over there. Okay, so generally, it is a good idea to eat healthy, get your rest, you know, your hydration, your sleep, all that stuff. But these are some strategies that I've employed over the years, just because I've been up and down, and I've learned that nothing happens overnight the way that we feel it does. Anybody else want to throw anything into that, Jason? No? Is Jason here?
I think his mic is off.
Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay. All right. So let's talk about there you go. Jason, let me unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself about 3 times.
Can you hear him?
No.
Hello, can you hear me? Everybody can hear me except
Brian, you can hear Jason?
Yep. Thomas, maybe
My volume.
is your volume all the way down, Thomas? Are you the one that's causing the problem?
Can you hear him?
Yeah, we can hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my volume was turned down.
He was trying to call me out, and that was on you, brother. That was on you.
It was on me.
I'll accept those cookies on the counter as an apology. Can we go back to the previous slide? There was a couple of things on there that I definitely wanted to interact with you on.
Were you trying to talk to me that whole time?
I definitely popped in twice.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll get better at this.
It's all good. It's our humanity showing, right? So I know you and I have had some conversations about this concept around sustainable advocacy, and stop arguing with people. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between debating, arguing, and maybe something that I find myself occasionally doing, which is just blowing off steam. So where do you draw the line with debating and arguing? Can we flesh that out a bit?
Well, emotion, right? When I feel emotionally invested in that debate, that is when I would call it an argument, right? There are ways you can have discussions or disagreements that are separated from your emotion, and it's just an intellectual exchange, right? Which is a debate is a step above, to me, a dialectic or a dialogue, in that there's a little bit more advocacy, yet that advocacy doesn't include emotion the way argument does. Like, I argue with my wife. I don't debate with my wife. I argue with my wife.
And you lose probably quite often.
All the time. I tried debating with her and I realized it doesn't work. I have to use the emotion, and it's usually me crying.
But so here's where it gets really, I'll say it gets really tough, because for most of us on this call, we're here because we're emotionally invested in the cause. So it's very hard to distance ourselves. And I see some nodding heads there that, yeah, how do I be non-emotional about this deeply emotional thing? And I think what it comes down to for me is divesting yourself of something Thomas said later in the slides. Divest yourself of the need to win the argument. You don't end up have to being right. Okay. And I think that's, for me, when I can focus on that, that's when I can keep myself emotionally distanced enough, because at the end of the day, my role in this is to provide the information and provide a different mirror of reality than what this individual has seen that has brought them to where they are today. Because something that I have over the course of my years of engagement with these types of conversation, something that I've come to just, I will acknowledge and blanketly apply to everybody, is I'm going to start from the place that everybody wants racism and systemic racism to be completely done away with. I'm going to start from that place. Yeah, exactly. But where people fall off is, how far have we come in eliminating racism, and what do we continue to do to move the process forward? Because most of you would say, like, yeah, even the most extreme person that I know that may be on the opposite side of all of these arguments with me, they don't want racism to happen. They don't want people to be hunted down on streets or choked out on sidewalks. That's not what people want. But they have a hard time accepting how deep-rooted this systemic injustice truly is. And so when I start from that place and just give people the benefit of the doubt that, okay, you want the same thing I want, you just don't believe the same thing I believe about these issues, that helps me say, all right, I don't want to get into attacking this person as a human, because they want the same thing, the same human thing that I want. So that's a very powerful center point for me. And then the other thing, sometimes I will add onto this slide maybe one piece here of sometimes I do just blow off steam where I am mad, and I do just ask somebody questions that I know exactly where they're going, but I draw them out to the point where they are showing themselves. It's not about me winning this argument, but something Thomas talked to us about a while ago was just, ask people a lot of questions. Have them question their beliefs. And don't let them off the hook when they sidestep the question. And sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit too emotionally engaged in a conversation with somebody like that, that's where I'll just go like, all right, I'm just going to go into absolute question mode. Anything you bring to me, I'm coming back to you with a question, and make them question their beliefs. And sometimes that's my method of, I'll call it blowing off steam. I don't know how healthy it is, but it helps me feel a little bit better at the end.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jason.
Yeah. Anybody else have other techniques that they've used to keep themselves emotionally and physically well through this?
And we actually have Michelle on here, who's going to be leading us in a breathing exercise at the end of the session. So not only will we participate in it, but hopefully this is something that we can take with us to remember to exercise throughout the week.
Dope.
All right, so let's talk about updates. We have quite a few things going. So I just want to go down the list. We have folks here who are going to be talking about what they have going in their cities. First, I'm going to talk briefly about Laverne, and I'm going to talk quickly about Laverne, and then I'm going to talk more in detail about what has been accomplished or why we've chosen to take these steps we did in Laverne. But what we have created in Laverne is a committee of cultural awareness and social inclusivity. The goal of that is basically to bring together stakeholders so that this is an ongoing conversation. Okay, so I think if you watched the video, I talked about it. We have a website called diverselaverne.org. Okay, and the point of that website is if you are experiencing any racial discrimination, prejudice, gender discrimination, etc., any type of prejudice, discrimination, whatever, that makes you feel less than welcome in the city, then you fill out that form, and then the committee basically acts as a power broker to try and mitigate whatever the impact of that incident might have caused. So the goal is, and I want to talk about it, but the goal is to have an ongoing discussion. And this is actually something that didn't start because of this. This started last year because of something else. And so again, this is advocacy that happens on a regular basis that should continue happening, but it just so happens that with everything that happened, we've been able to move it forward. The Laverne City Council has agreed to adopt it and accept it. And it was originally thought to be a community-based committee. Now it's going to be an official city committee. So we'll have the full support of the city and hopefully the other organizations. So that's what we've kind of started here in Laverne. And then from that, the goal is to have continual conversations about these sort of things as they pop up and things that we know that already exist. Do we have a Claremont representative? Jenna. Jenna, are you available? Are you here?
I'm here, yes.
Hey, Jenna.
Hi. Hi. Okay, Claremont. I have Claremont notes. I'm Jenna, everyone. I live in Claremont. So Claremont, I guess I'll start with the march. Claremont had a march of about 1,500 people on June 6th. It was called Walk a Mile in Our Shoes. And the organizers of that event, Yosue Barnes and Noah Winnick, they've gone on to start a community organization here, which is now filing for nonprofit status. That organization is called Claremont Change. So for anyone in Claremont, they are at Claremont Change on Instagram and Facebook. They have like a growing, I would say a growing presence in Claremont, and are trying to sort of unify the residents around their mission, which I wrote down here, which is to organize and sustain local action to secure racial justice and positive social change in Claremont and neighboring communities through a review of civic policies, reallocation of city funds, and real commitment to care for our most vulnerable citizens, which is pretty cool. So they they have a number of I would say current action items or current areas of focus that they're looking into. One of them is certainly through the last two city council meetings, is looking into the budget. Claremont budget it goes into effect July 1st. So when a lot of this started happening and people in the community started sort of logging in and finding out what was going on in our municipal government, many more, I should say, than had before. This budget had already been approved and there was no changing it. And that budget has increased the police budget by 7% and has decreased the human services budget by more than 8%, almost 9%. And a lot of that is certainly going to salaries, both for and benefits, both for the police officers, and still the salaries and benefits are not what is being cut in human services. So we're talking about truly the actual services and human services being cut in Claremont. And so this is getting brought up at the city council meetings. Josue and Noah have been very active on those city council meetings. And I will also say that the Claremont residents, I've come every week with my notes ready to make a comment. And the Claremont residents are pretty badass. They've done their research. They are professors of social change, they are pretty intense, and they have I'm the budget shouldn't look like this. And they're actually, I'd like to look at line items, so it's very impressive what's happening.
Claremont does have it going on.
Yeah, it's pretty intimidating, to be honest. But I will say, there was a city council meeting on Tuesday. So at this city council meeting, the police chief of Claremont, Shelley Vanderveen, Chief Vanderveen, presented kind of a rebuttal, or maybe how we score on the 8 Can't Wait campaign and how we score on the what is the other one called? Campaign Zero, which I think in a lot of the public comment and in a lot of the opinion, it is not really applicable to our community. It doesn't go far enough. Those who have been on the forefront of those campaigns have since stepped back or said that they don't go far enough. They are one answer, but certainly the residents of Claremont who responded to the presentation said this is not relevant to us. This is not what we're asking of you, and your statistics mean very little to us. Specifically, some big wins at Tuesday's meeting were that the Claremont is now voluntarily banned the carotid artery hold, which is the controversial hold that has been all over the news since the George Floyd murder, and well before that as well. Claremont PD is also talking about some interesting things. They requested some programming around checking in on the wellness of officers, and so a formalized program that would check in on officers' wellness at certain periods of time, after certain events, some sort of programming that would take place within the department after an intense encounter, for example. Claremont has recently removed an officer position and is replacing that with a community service officer. That goes into effect this year. And then it was sort of a lot of the same. Chief Vanderveen said, we want to improve our interpersonal communication skills. We want to improve de-escalation training, more training, more money, which is all well and good. But the badass residents were it's not far enough, unfortunately, and spent about 2 hours responding to that, saying, Claremont currently has a program in place where if there's officer misconduct, there's an internal review process. We need to see that gone. The city council members themselves there's an attorney on the city council named Jed Leono, freshman city council member, and he questioned the legal implication. And he said, I've talked to federal lawyers this week. I've talked to state lawyers this week. He went home and did his homework and spoke to attorneys and judges around the country that he knew to find out whether or not this was the best way to do it, whether this is an ethical way to do it, and whether we can do better. And so this is all leading up to say that on July 9th is the next police commission meeting. And there has not been any release so far of what the agenda looks like, but the City Council of Claremont has asked for Chief Intervene to present on a number of these problematic areas of our current practices. And something that I thought was really important in this meeting that came out was that if our police forces are not codifying changes that we would like to see. So Chief Vanderveen kept saying, I don't hire officers as a practice. I don't hire officers who have been disciplined or fired from another city. And the city council came back themselves and said, no, it's really great, but that needs to be codified because you're a great police chief and we respect you. However, you are not here forever and we are not here forever. And these change needs to happen now and it needs to be codified now in our city. So that's going to be a really big police commission meeting on the 9th. I would say that Mayor, for example, was quite defensive and certainly said, if you guys have problems, you should go join the police commission, which is a tough pill to swallow since that is that's an appointed position. You apply for the police commission and then they recruit from within and bring you up within. And that is another thing that Claremont Change is trying to move for is an elected position, elected police commission position, et cetera. One last thing that I'll say is that Claremont has a really important city council election coming up this fall, soon here, because in 2019, and those police commissions, yes, are open to everyone. It's on Zoom right now. I believe it'll be on Zoom. And you can find that on the Claremont city website. Claremont has a big election coming up. There are in 2019, Claremont, in order to be more equitable with the way that the city council represents the city, they sectioned off each seat on the city council to correspond to a district within the city. And so one of our districts, which is the southmost district of the city, it is has no one sitting currently in that seat. Up for election, and there's currently no one running for it. And if anyone knows of someone living in Claremont who would like to run for city council, that process is really straightforward. The window is from July 13th to August 6th to put your name in on that, and you just need 20 signatures of voters in Claremont, registered voters anywhere in Claremont to get your name on that ballot. And there's a lot of relief in terms of filing fees and et cetera, particularly due to COVID. And so I really encourage us to think through who is in Claremont, who could take over these seats. The other seat that is open has had a career Claremont politician, pretty good guy, Corey Kaleke, but he's running for that position again. But it is open and could be contested. Yes, so for following along in Claremont, go follow Claremont Change. They know about over here, they know about Operation Ally, they know about SJAP, and I am attending those meetings. Again, their next meeting for Claremont Change is on Tuesday, June 30th. Yeah. Yes.
Can you put that information in the chat?
Absolutely. Yes.
And if they have a website or a page or something, can you also put that information in there as well?
Yep. That's it.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was great, Jenna. Thank you.
All right. I believe it's Eric for San Dimas. Eric?
Yeah. Hey, Thomas. How are you?
Hey.
Good to connect with you. I think we chatted not too long ago. So
Yes, sir.
Happy to give you an update on what's happening here in San Dimas. San Dimas is a very different city than Claremont and some of the other cities here. And I think the thing that makes you San Dimas a little bit more unique is that it's the only city that I know of on this list that contracts with the LA County Sheriff's Department to provide law enforcement. So San Dimas does not have its own police force. The other thing that makes San Dimas really unique, besides it being, I think, the most conservative of these 5 cities you have listed by far, is that we have a city council of 4 members and then a mayor. And of 2 of the positions on the city council are current active duty law enforcement. So one is a lieutenant on the LA County Sheriff's Department, and then the other one is a police officer in the Glendora Police Department, and then the mayor is ex-law enforcement. So you have a very very particular view of how the city should run, what kinds of positions they should take on social matters and the rest. And they're all 5 white men, older than I think 50. I think. Well, actually, no, that's not true. The 2 cops are in their late 30s. So 2 weeks ago, when I was talking with some of my friends who do not live in San Dimas but who are Black, I asked, "What can I do to help in the movement?" And they said, "Please help amplify our voices locally." And living here in San Dimas, I called up one of my other friends, Isabel, and the 2 of us said, maybe we can get the city council to at least adopt a resolution acknowledging what happened to George Floyd and just making a statement that racism is not really, it doesn't have a place here in San Dimas. That evolved into a larger resolution where we had not only wanted to have George Floyd's name invoked, but also to set up some sort of a civilian review committee to just make sure that there was some sort of civilian oversight of the activities of the sheriff's department. Unfortunately, because of the bent of our city council, and I would really largely attribute this to them, there was considerable resistance first to doing a resolution. And then once we proposed a resolution, they felt very strongly about inserting the police officers that had been injured or killed during the protests. And we felt that was inappropriate for a couple of reasons. It's not that we are anti-police. We're not. We're very happy with our sheriff's department. We feel that overall they do a pretty good job of maintaining good community relations. It's that if you are going to have a resolution about what's been happening to Black people across the country as a result of police brutality and violence over decades, it is inappropriate to also insert language in there that honors police officers that have been killed in the line of duty. It's a different resolution. It's a different statement. It's something that should be done during some other event, but it's not in the same resolution. In fact, if you were to look at all the resolutions that have been passed, there's not a single resolution that A, doesn't name George Floyd, and B, includes language in there that recognizes police officer deaths and the rest. So we organized, we turned out a rally on the steps of City Hall on the day of the City Council meeting. 80 people attended, and some of the opponents actually, I shouldn't say some of the opponents, some of the City Council members who were opposed to us went through the back door, which caused a bit of a kerfluffle. And then during the meeting itself, it was very clear that they did not have their support. They did not support our efforts. One City Council member in particular, Ryan Vienna, he has a bit of a reputation, and you can watch the video. There's video of this, but he actually took a fair amount of time. He did a few things that I thought were very controversial and beneath the dignity of his office that he holds, both as an officer of the law as well as a city council member. During the rally, he actually confronted one of the teenage organizers at San Dimas High School and brought her into council chambers. And she had made some allegations about racism at San Dimas High School. And he said in a very threatening tone to her, I want you to know that I have to look into this and I'm going to investigate every single allegation that you made and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And it wasn't done in a way that, if you look at just the language itself, it wasn't done in a way that said, I'm here to help you. It was basically a threat. That's what she had felt. And knowing that he walked in there very angrily, it was, it certainly, I see no reason why not to believe her. And then in the city council meeting herself, which is publicly captured and on video, he attacked the organizers of this. He accused them of being family members of one of the city council members that supported us, John Ebner. He made some very, very personal attacks against, various people who were in support of this. And it was just a really, really ugly scene. And so that's what we're dealing with. At the end of the day, they did pass a resolution that we did not support. They did some editing on the fly and they did insert George Floyd's name. They were against that, but they inserted his name. But then in addition to that, they did insert a bunch of other names, some of which we're not as familiar with, but of protesters and officers who had been injured or killed throughout the events over the past few weeks. So we didn't ultimately get what we wanted. I don't even actually know if the Civilian Review Board was in the resolution. We haven't seen the final text since they were editing it live. But even if it did, I don't necessarily have faith that that will have any type of, that will be implemented in a way that I think will be meaningful. And so then we're looking ahead and figuring out what we do next. We're in conversations with the broader community about that. And we will make a decision soon about where we go from here. So I think that it really does show you that a few things, if you have a very supportive city council, you can work wonders. If you don't, then really then it's about organizing, trying to figure out what you can get and whether that requires changes in the city council in order to get that. And we're in those discussions now about what we think is the best path forward. The city council does not have another election for another 2 years, so that's a bit of ways off. And we hope in the meantime, we can work with all 5 members of the city council, including the mayor, even though they may not necessarily share our views. I think that, some of the members of our community are suffering because it was a very painful experience, as you can imagine. So I do, I think some of the things that people resonate about not taking things personally and how do you not get emotionally invested, is relevant. My personal view is I actually am not really upset by any of this. I knew walking in what we were up against. I knew what their views were. And this may be a controversial statement, but I actually don't really believe that everybody wants to end racism. I don't necessarily believe that everybody wants to be in a world that is free and open. I actually do think that there are bad people out there. And as an example of that, we can look at the killers of Arbery. They hunted him down like an animal. And then after they shot him several times, they called him the N-word while he was bleeding to death on the ground. So it's very hard for me I'm not equating at all any members of our community with that. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily think that there are people who share a view, and if you talk to them enough, they'll get there. And so for me, I think the way I approach organizing in San Dimas is I'm about finding people who don't believe and share the same values we do, which is equality for all, honoring all life, no matter who they are, and doing things at the appropriate time. That also extends to police officers as well. And then finding those supporters, turning them out, organizing them, and making sure that if it does end up being a turnout game, that our side wins. So that's where things stand. And I feel very proud and confident of what we built in a very conservative city in a matter of 2 weeks. I think that this is not our peak. We have a lot more to go. And at the end of the day, I do believe in what Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And we will see that happen here in San Dimas.
And quite honestly, I was very encouraged by the San Dimas City Council. I think I gleaned a lot more hope from that than I think a lot of people did, just because you have the community show up, right? You have people literally show up and share their stories in ways that other people in San Dimas had not heard, right? Somebody literally said, racism doesn't exist in San Dimas, right? And then you had San Dimas residents share their stories of experiencing it right here. So you guys accomplished something great. And what Ryan Vienna is, I believe, a cop, right? So quite honestly, things are going to come along, and I don't usually take people at their first blush, but it's a work in progress. And I think exposure goes a long way. And what you guys did is you guys started the exposure of that. And I mean, Ryan himself said on the day is he's open, right? So he wants people to share their stories with him. So people need to share their stories with him. That way he comes to understand that this is a local issue and that this is something that a community can work on together. But you guys did a great job. And I enjoyed your comment about being offended that they left you out and only talked about Isabel. That was pretty clever.
Oh, that was actually Steve. That was not.
Oh, Steve. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I think that the one thing I appreciate about this movement is, and maybe this is a topic of conversation for later, but grassroots movements fall apart for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one oftentimes is ego and ulterior motives and trying to use the spotlight to advance your own personal motive, whatever they may be, goals. And I think that we as a grassroots movement have very candid conversations all the time that we speak as one, our diversity is our strength, our power is our unity. And whatever we decide, we do so in a way where there may be disagreements, but we commit and we move forward. And there is no ego. We check those because we recognize that we're in this for the long haul. And so Isabel did a great job of taking many, many arrows, personal arrows. And I felt really bad for her father-in-law, as one of the city council members who sponsored this, John Ebner. He had to hear his son being attacked by Councilman Viana. He had to hear his other members of his family be attacked, his son, etc. And I really commend him for that. So, we'll see. It's really up to Ryan Vienna's to Ryan Vienna as to whether or not he decides to open up. The currency ideal and is not necessarily what you say in front of the cameras; it's what you do. I have so far not seen any actions that have necessarily spoken to him being supportive of this, and until I do, I won't necessarily buy that. So it is really, he's watching. It's really in his court. I'm always open. I extend a hand of friendship. I think that certainly he's very passionate about what he believes in, and maybe we can find some ground on which to work together on. But until then, we will stand our ground.
All right, great. So we do have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We also have a movie night scheduled at the same time. So we're gonna have to reschedule our meeting, but we'll be meeting soon.
Yeah, and just real quick, Eric, I just want to say fantastic work that you guys are doing. And, you're maybe in more so than other cases going into a strong, quote unquote, enemy held territory, right? So what you got to do in that, just looking at the long-term effectiveness of your advocacy, is to ensure that you do accept the small victories along the way, right? Even if somebody doesn't mean it in their heart, they put it on record. Now what you have is the ability to hold them accountable to what they said. And if they're not going to be held accountable to what they said on record, now you have means through which to cause them to be divided from their position, right? So I just want to, send a little shout out of encouragement to you guys as you're invading enemy territory. If you want to say, every inch that you take is an inch to be celebrated. Don't be discouraged by it. Don't be frustrated by it, but know that this is just going to be your path. And, we're here to support you through that process, to encourage you through that process. And if you need to blow off steam and just yell, we can be there for you for that too. Yeah. Right, man?
Well, I'm very calm, and I know exactly in which the territory I'm operating in. So there will be no, I don't think any of them know who I am, and I frankly am fine with that. I don't really want them to know who I am, but they will know that we're in this for the long haul because our cause is a just one, and I'm frankly not. I just am not really bothered by anything that happened. I think that we will get to where we need to, and we will find a path forward. So I do appreciate your encouragement.
All right.
And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. I'm gonna skip Pomona. They are voting on I believe the budget on Monday. Mayor Sandoval's open, he's listening. Miranda is doing great jobs leading the charge over there. And so we have folks from West Covina who are going to share about what's happening in West Covina. And then we're gonna, I know these are probably a little longer than anticipated, but I think this is all good information for us to understand what is happening in our local community. So we have West Covina, TJ, and I believe Peter is here as well.
And Yusuf as well.
Oh, Yusuf. Hey, Yusuf.
Yeah.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
All right. Well, the floor is yours, my brother.
Should we just explain where we started?
Yeah, just talk basically who you guys, you guys have organized into Change West Covina, right? So a brief background of, how you guys started and what you guys are after, where you guys are. I know we're meeting tomorrow, but just where you are up until now.
So a few weeks ago, my name is Yusuf. I'm 19 years old, and Peter, he's 17, so he's still in high school. And a few weeks ago, when everything happened, the protests erupted. We wanted to figure out what we can do locally, and so because of that, I started poring over my city's website, and I realized that the preliminary budget that was about to pass for the 2020-2021 had like 47% allocations to the police, like 9% to community development, 3% for like public services, like 9% for support services, and like close to 30% for the fire department. And so in West Covina, there is a lot of political sway that we've seen from public safety and our local government. And because of that, we realized that there was most of our budget, close to like 70% of our budget, was being spent on public safety, while other departments in our city were underserved, understaffed, or being furloughed. And so Peter and I thought that that was a big issue for us. We never really knew city budgets before, and so because of that, Peter made a few graphics, and those graphics sort of spread, and it sparked a conversation amongst picked up by Instagram pages in our city. And from there, a lot of people started reaching out to us, either former like city council members, other residents, concerned residents in the city, and also like kids our age who lived in the city. And so Peter and I started this thing called Change West Covina. And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, a Facebook forum. And
Got the links.
all the links. Yeah, I'm gonna plug us right now.
Yeah.
But so far we have just kind of focused on learning more about like the complex web politics in our city. And I think our goals are to reallocate funds away from our goals are definitely to reallocate funds away from the police and try and see other departments in our city become more developed. And we hope that people in our city can recognize that if we prioritize public safety over the other departments, we've neglected other services that could possibly be more beneficial to other residents in our city. And so that's kind of why we started. And right now we're in the phase of just educating ourselves about our local government and trying to get other people more involved in their local government as well.
Well, and remember, we're not necessarily trying to reprioritize, but revision, right? Because public safety, if you get your parks and recs clean and taken care of and folks are outside and living good lives, then we know that crime goes down in those communities. So public safety includes all of those other departments as well. But I am so encouraged by the West Covina folk. Peter ain't even graduated high school yet, and he making change. So I'm with it.
You guys are doing a great job, man. You guys are doing a great job. Actually, I just wanted to jump in here to share a piece of information. I actually sat down with some officials from the city of West Covina today, and I think it's it fits for every single city that we have listed here as local movements. Which is the pushback, ultimately, and like you're talking about today, as far as sustainability, one of the things we could have added on that first slide is that this is a marathon. This is, you know what I'm saying? So there is no quick fix, easy solution to any of the problems that we're seeing, because it's woven into a system that is hundreds of years old, right? So we're shifting a huge boat. But one of the things that I spoke to the city about, and that they shared to me this today, which I think I'm going to hear, and I imagine all of you guys will ultimately hear too, is that the funds, because of COVID, because of our whole climate, not just the incident which created the civil unrest, but because of everything that's going on right now, cities will struggle with funding for all areas, right? And because of that climate, they always are going to say that public safety is the priority. So then if we go and then discuss these things with them as far as how do we use that priority to meet more needs in the community, they're always going to come back with, there's not enough money, there's not enough budget, right? And considering our circumstances, that answer is only going to gain validity as we see, the economic situation that we're in. So what I would say is the best way to have sustainable effect, this is my personal opinion, the best way to have sustainable effect in all of our local movements is to do what you guys are all doing locally, which is create continuity. And then for us to support each other to cover those gaps that's going to be left in all of our cities through the city, as well as the other community partners that are all drive our city. Now we can then take a understanding collectively to help them see these issues. You know, I'm just thinking about that sheriff, and I have no idea who he is. I was not there, but it does represent a mindset, and we have to be aware of that. And so I think those are the things that we can focus on, is just kind of focus on the good, like work on the things that we can affect and have great impact on, and then let it grow out. So that's what I would say, just as a piece of advice to other movements, as well as West Covina Change, because I live in the city, and of course I support the youth creating a voice for yourselves, man. That is the most awesome part that I just smile about when I think about you guys. But I can say that it's going to be a long fight, because you know you got to dig through layers before you even get to the truth. We haven't even, and just listening to all of you guys comment in some places, I think Claremont spoke about them actually having deep conversation and getting to the root of it. Then that's a benefit. But for others, like the city of West Covina, what we're saying, there was no protest, there was no no violent protest. There were peaceful protests. There's no damage done to our city. We really didn't lose anything. Our community is not like all the things that we're seeing in TV. So if that is the mindset, what they're saying is there's no need for change. There's no need for change. There's nothing that needs to be changed. We're doing well. Our police department is not Minnesota, or we're not in St. Louis, and our people really are not that way. And so if that is true, it should be easy to establish these things. And one of the first things that I got smashed in my face when I walked in the meeting today was the whole, what is it called?
The 8 can't wait.
The 8 can't wait.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that just shows how deep this goes, if you ask me, because that's the system's response, right? That's the system's response. That's easy. All that stuff is common knowledge that anyone should be able to honor. That does not talk about the particular problems in our city. And I would imagine it's the same thing. I heard it said already. I think Claremont or Laverne said the same thing. You know, it doesn't address our particular issues. So I just share that, that's my point of view, because I am working and I'm an advocate in West Covina, a little different from West Covina Change. And I think what you guys will see, and you're seeing very quickly, is that this gets deeper than you might have thought at the beginning, right? And then also the effects, right? When we talk about reallocating budget, how does that affect our community as well? And so all these things have to be brought to the table. My last point is that the way to hold these cities accountable, because that is the biggest piece, right, is accountability. I mean, who's holding that sheriff accountable if he's talking to our youth like that, right? The only way we can do that is, I agree with Eric Nakano when he said that our strength is in our unity. So as we continue to build strengths within our individual movements, the communication between each and every one of us will help us take those steps that the next group has already succumbed. So that would be my piece of it. And I thank you guys. I just think this is awesome, and I'm happy to be a part of moving us all forward. It's great.
Yeah, Peter and I are definitely really thankful that people were able to reach out to us and set up connections with us and sort of guide us into like tangible change. Because at the end of the day, that's what Peter and I want. That's what most of our friends want to see. And so, yeah.
Give us a couple words, Peter. I know you like to get off meetings without talking.
You know me, Thomas. I was waiting. No, I just want to say thank you. So we found a lot of adults that actually believe in us, no matter political views. Because in our opinion, this is not a political issue. This is a moral thing. Racism is not a political issue. So we want to reimagine public safety. look at where our budget's going, look at where our money's going. And city council's been annoyed about us for a long time. They're trying to pander to us. A small win that we got, we were talking about small wins, a small win we got in the last meeting. You know, unfortunately, they passed the budget. We already knew that was going to happen, but Dario at the end of the meeting wanted to put on the table to look at the use of force policy and get rid of the Instagram mugshots that create like a racist narrative. So that was a small win for us, but we're going to keep pushing, keep sending emails. We've sent more than 100, a lot of them coming from the youth. And, you know, we're just trying to keep moving forward. But, you know, thank you to Thomas and TJ and all the adults that are trying to help us through this movement. I mean, we're young, but, you know, we still see what's right and we still see what's wrong. We're just trying to make a change too. So thank you guys for that.
So part of the reason why I wanted you guys to do presentations, particularly after I talked about sustainability, is for folks to understand that there are things happening literally all over the place all the time. And this is energy that is out right now that is moving probably in ways that we haven't been familiar, right? So San Dimas has something to learn from West Covina. West Covina has something to learn from San Dimas, which has something to learn from Claremont, which has something to learn from Laverne, right? These resources, this knowledge, this innovation gets diffused in these different areas. And, you know, there are other cities, right? A couple people weren't able to make it tonight. Okay, so if we connect and we, you know that this is happening and we're able to help sustain each other, right? When you guys need bodies, then we help you. When we need bodies, you help us. Then that's how we do this more sustainably as a collective unit, even though I fervently believe that each community should come up with their own solutions. The network of movement is what's going to help each city reach those ends. So thank you guys. And everybody who is participating in leadership. TJ, thank you very much. That's my my big brother right there. He's actually my godfather, like my consigliere. All right. So Jason, this is.
I'll take it.
All right. So Jason, you want to talk about growing the movement?
Yeah, so this is a very critical part of what we're doing and needing to see done within the movement. We are so thankful to everyone and the work that has been, done thus far within our local communities, and seeing these types of reports are just, they really are soul filling. And I can see even in the responses and the chat, so many people are encouraged, challenged. I mean, me personally, I'm like, hey, where's the IE at? We've got all this SGV representation. I'm out here in Fontana. I've been in the IE for a while, and we need to be moving forward more strategically on this side of the line as well. So great work there. But what's truly important that I wanted to share tonight is we need to grow the movement, because in order to make systemic change to our region, one of the things that we're going to need to truly do is have more informed people like all of you taking these things to their city councils. And one of the things that I know is true, people in these types of roles, that if one person is just showing up over and over again, it's like, all right, that's that one person. They can kind of write them off. But we need to be able to show that there's a large community around this. So that begins with, why is it important? There's power in numbers, right? City councils are responsible to their constituency. And when they see more people are involved in these types of activities and these types of statements, especially when they begin to recognize that these statements are coming out of a coordinated effort, such as Operation Ally or Claremont Change or Covina Change, when they recognize that there is a group within their city that is influencing people who have never showed up to their city council meetings, and now they're on their doorsteps with strong demands, all of a sudden the movement receives greater credibility. So there's power in numbers in what we do. We need to have more people here. Also, team support. I mean, this meeting once a week is fantastic. And I know we have our group page on a regular basis, and that's encouraging as well. As we start seeing people take steps of action, we start hearing testimonies of individuals who have had conversations with friends and family members and begin to open up their eyes. That type of team camaraderie is valuable to us, and the more people within the network, the better we're all going to be equipped. This all ties into the sustainable advocacy, because there's that morale behind it. And then lastly, it just creates a sustainable model, because there's a lot of people out there who are starting to do something. They're just individuals, and they have a passion, and they're showing up at the doorsteps of the city council, and they're starting to say things, but maybe they don't have a group like this with the resources involved, with the 6 years of study that Thomas has research and collection, and all the things that we're provided here in this group. Creates greater sustainability when we can bring in those individuals who might be kind of fighting the fight on their own, right? We know the value we get out of this group. Let's hone in others to be a part of it. So it is critically important that we continue to grow the group, invite other people, let them know about things. So who's the ideal person? People that you have personal relationship with. I always start there. Just walking up to a stranger on the street and saying, hey, come join this Facebook Zoom with me, that isn't really going to be very, very effective. So people who you have personal relationship with, that you've talked with about some of these issues, and maybe over the last month or so, you begin to see them take thought that they hadn't taken thought on before. Maybe they're beginning to understand things in a new way. Maybe they said things such as, yeah, but I just don't know what we can actually do. Or, the system is what it is. I kind of am just taking care of my family, and I want to, make sure things are good for my kids. These are people who, once again, I believe in the goodness of humanity. And I believe most people want to see things change like this. Granted, what I typically say is there's 10% of crazies on one side and 10% of crazies on the other, but the 80% in the middle, that's who I'm going to talk with. And that's who I'm going to try and move towards engagement in this type of a movement. So when you have people who you are in personal relationship with that have given indicators around interest, or oh my gosh, I don't understand what's going on, I don't know how to make a difference. People who use language like, all of this is so overwhelming. I felt really overwhelmed for a period of time while I was right at the beginning of everything coming together with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. There was an overwhelming feeling, even with me as an individual who's been working in this type of an environment for a long time. But once I gained this advocacy, and once I gained real directed action, all of a sudden I wasn't overwhelmed anymore. I was empowered to do something. So listen for those types of things in your language with people as you're talking with them. And maybe you've never thought like, oh, they're probably not all the way in on something like Operation Ally, but it might be the exact thing that they're looking for, because they've just been overwhelmed, so they've ran away and they've pushed it off. Because that's what people do when they're overwhelmed, right? They just kind of hunker in, and they don't want to hear it anymore. I don't even listen to the news anymore. Nothing's good. Well, hey, you want to hear some good news? We just had an amazing display of 5 different cities and the progress that's being made. That's good news. That should be something that people are encouraged by, right? So when you hear these types of languages, these are invitations for you to begin to speak to the empowerment that this group has given you, and the ability to not just have to deal with this stuff, but actually take action to move it forward. And then start looking at people who have liked your post. Maybe you haven't talked to these people since high school, and you have no idea what's going on in their lives, but you may share something that you learned in this group. Or you may have liked a post that somebody else did, and you realize you have another friend that did, and they've never been a part of this or something like this. Say, hey, that's a great Facebook message in Messenger. I know many of the people that I've invited, it's just been, I'm working towards actual change this time. I know everybody's overwhelmed with what's going on. Come check out this group that we've got going on Tuesday nights. Or Thursday, sorry. Got my groups mixed up. And just give them the invitation because obviously something in that post was attractive enough for them to engage into. And then how do you approach, as our last thing, I think I pretty well mentioned that kind of throughout, share something you've learned. Nobody likes to be pitched anything or pigeonholed into anything, but most people do enjoy hearing your personal experience. And personal experiences are one of the most undeniable influencers in people's lives. That's why we go to Yelp. That's why we go to our friends. You know, I'm looking to buy a new pair of sandals, and I don't know too many men who wear sandals a lot. So the one person I know, that a male who wears sandals all the time, like, hey, you're my expert. Tell me what I should know. I'm looking for your recommendation based on what you've learned in your life experience. And we do this for everything. We should be doing this. We should be leveraging our personal experiences. So maybe something that Yusuf said was inspiring to you today. And there's somebody in your life that you want to have a part of this group, but you don't quite know how to bring it up to them. You're like, oh man, there's this kid in West Covina who's doing some amazing things. Can I share that with you? And just share the story, the experience. See how they engage in that conversation with you. And if you feel it's appropriate, say, you know what? I think you'd like checking out one of these meetings with me. I'm not asking for you to join the movement. Just check out one of these meetings. They do cool stuff all the time. And you make it very easy and based in what you have been doing. So share what you've learned, invite them to be at one meeting, and say literally, just come once. I don't care if you ever come back. And if they like what we're doing, they'll continue to move forward. But certainly, to make regional change, systemic change, lasting change, we're going to need groups like this, groups like what's going on in Claremont and West Covina to continue to grow. That's not going to happen if we keep this a secret. So be bold about it. I just shared the video on my Facebook page. Every week when Thomas goes live, that's another opportunity for us, right? To, in fact, Thomas, we might want to consider incorporating that into our actual agenda after we go live. Give 2-3 minutes for people to then share that out to your own individual Facebook pages, because you never know who's trolling through your Facebook page and all of a sudden they realize, oh, well, that was an interesting 10 seconds that I listened to as I rolled by, and maybe they ask you a question. So those are my thoughts on how we continue to grow this movement and make it easy for you to be inviters to the meeting. You don't have to have all the answers. And that's even a great place to start with somebody when they're like, oh, well, what are you guys actually doing? How are you going to make, you know what? I don't have all the answers, but I'm learning and I'm growing, and we're going to do something. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there. Thomas, I'll toss it back to you.
Okay, so basically, really quick, I want to talk about some sustainability since we're seeing movements in places. Advocacy through community. One thing that we have to understand is that the solution isn't only in convincing public officials, it's actually convincing other parts of the community who hasn't caught up yet. Okay, and that's a lot of our friends, a lot of our family, a lot of our co-workers, people who need to be exposed, okay? And so our job as advocates and allies is to reach out to various parts of the community to try and get those community members to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And the reason is those people are going to be going to the polls. You're going to be going to the polls. We need consistency across the board, at least as much as possible, in order to get to the critical mass that is going to get the policy changes that we need. And unless the community comes to understanding what those things are, it's not going to happen. And your goal and abilities in your particular personal spaces is to engage those communities for different types of discussions. So actually somebody mentioned earlier, I believe it's Claremont, that is formed into a 501c3. I talked about our community-based committee in Laverne becoming an official city committee. we can organize these in ways that begin to have or keep the discussion going beyond just this moment. And that's our goal. Our goal isn't to get as much movement right now where it's all hot. Our goal is to build. That way, when things are calm again, we're like this conversation is still able to be sustained, because this stuff happens in between the hashtags. And the reason why those hashtags are so powerful is because things grow, they build, and then something bad happens and then we explode. Okay, so the goal is to constantly have these conversations and to constantly provide access to policies and leadership from individuals who are experiencing these things. And that's why, again, the structure that we came up with in Laverne is to have that intermediary position where, you know, people may not feel comfortable going to the business owner or going whatever, but if we who are engaged in the city and maybe have a relationship with the Chamber of Commerce or the business owner or whatever, then it could go a long way in helping folks feel comfortable in our communities when they come into our communities, right? And so the way you do that is by literally making diversity, inclusion, cultural appreciation, understanding, and compassionate living the mission of your group. If it is the mission, what this group is about, that's going to get defined a number of different ways based on your community, but your community should be able to come to understanding and come to agreement on this, because as everybody is saying, they're not racist, okay? So if they're not racist and they don't really have issues, well, how do we set up a structure that allow these conversations to continue? And that was actually something I saw that was pretty, that's what I took away from the San Dimas meeting. Like there was language in there to start that committee to continue the language. And it appeared most, if not all, of the council were in favor of that community-based committee. And that to me provides an avenue for these types of narratives to continue to be had in the community space. So that's where I'm able to glean a victory from our San Dimas advocates for last night. And it's, if nothing else, that the city is open to having a community-based system for dialogue and hopefully change. So with that, the action items on Friday, we have a discussion at 7 p.m., a movie-end discussion at 7 p.m. The link will be up and posted in Operation Ally. Next week, we're asking you to bring at least one friend, one person who is going to be able to give up some time and listen to what it is we have to say. Get the book well, all right? So if you understand literally what the end vision in all of this, or if you want to understand it, this book is it. Like it is a transformative text. After all my years of public administration training and legal training, this book does such a great job encapsulating the health issues. And I think, again, this all goes back to how do we create a system where folks can lead healthy, happy, balanced lives free of discrimination. That is the end goal, right? And so this book, I think, is a brilliant work. If you do not have an Audible account, let me know. I can send you a link and you can get the book for free. I have it in both text and audio, but the Audible book or the audio book is a very easy thing to get through. So jump in it, get into it as much as you can, because that's where we're going to start pulling the framework for where we go from here. It's called Well, like right here, and it's written by Sandro. Galea. I'm trying to open the window back up. Sandro Galea. All right, and then get through as much as you can. And then the final thing is, last week you were supposed to, engage in conversations with folks, just asking questions, interested to see how that went. But this week, let's start talking about how if there is a community group that is started, how do you join that group, or how do we get that group in? Or if there is no group, how do you start a community-based group that can start facilitating these discussions that happen on a regular basis? Okay, the goal isn't to compete with any existing group. Odds are there are people who are having this conversation, but maybe the conversation they're having doesn't appeal to the folks you having your circle, right? Maybe you're able to get folks who would otherwise never attend any of these programs or never get out into any of these programs, and you might be the catalyst to getting this type of discussion started in your community. So there is no group too small, and that's the goal, is that you start working toward that community-based advocacy.
Thomas, I wanted to add one other thing. Going back to growing the group, inviting people, I have found the most effective invites through all the different organizations that I've built are always direct and personal. So even if you have like 25 people who you may have written down on a list while I was talking, don't send them a group text message. Don't put them in a group Facebook. Like, everybody hates those things. Send them direct. Even if you send them the same text, send it individually, because it tells the person that you really thought about them and you're willing to take the extra 14 seconds out of your life to text them individually. So whether that's a text or a Facebook direct message, even a reply within a community post page where somebody seems to agree with where we're moving, I've always found those to be most effective. Don't do don't only do a broad post to everybody, but to the individuals that you're really thinking about, that you have those relationships with, directly ask them. And if they say they were going to be there, be like, hey, I thought you were going to be there. Is everything okay? And follow up with, I'd love for you to be there next time, but maybe we can plan on watching it together and talking about it afterwards. That's just, so I wanted to add that in.
Awesome. And I know we're right up on 7. So I wanted Michelle to lead us in a breathing exercise that we can do as a community, and then hopefully have this as a tool to take with us.
Awesome. All right, you guys. So we'll just take a couple of minutes. It's already 6:59. You can close your eyes, or if that's uncomfortable for you, stare down the bridge of your nose or find a focal point